Pretty badass start, right? Nice homage to 20th Century Fox. I know I'm not the only one that grew up watching Predator and Die Hard and Aliens. How you guys doing? My name's Tom. I am the creator here of Nostalgia Box, and while RetroPie and Emulation Station are what presumably brought you to this build, and I'm sure you've seen both of them before, you're probably wondering why is this different. Well, to be absolutely honest with you, everything's different about this build. I went down the path of quality and quantity, which requires a significant amount of fine-tuning to provide you with the experience that I have. For me, it was all about the user experience, just the best of everything. Quality and quantity was what I wanted to echo throughout. Even down to the console itself, the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus board, comes with that gorgeous custom case, the bulletproof Logitech F310 controller. It functions right out of the box. All this stuff, you set it right up and you'll have no issues. I have QA'd this system for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, taken notes about every exclusive console of the 82, and have provided you with all detailed information in my user guide about how to play each of these systems. So I thought it would be best, and instead of trying to explain to you if you're new to what RetroPie is, or you're curious as to why this is any different than everything else I've seen on eBay and Etsy, I figured it'd be easiest just to show you. Now, full disclosure, you'll probably get to see in the shitty reflection of this TV this awesome backdrop I have covering, the blinds with my cool curtain. You'll get to see my frizzled hair. This is not a Hollywood production, but I don't think it needs to be to show you just how awesome this build is. So, with keeping that in mind, away we go. I'm going to go console by console real quick and just highlight a few things. Here's the Commodore Amiga. And the idea here was to kind of provide a history of games in a sense, young and old, to span across decades. So this experience can really be shared from father to son, mother to daughter, nephew to niece. I don't know. It's no short supply of wonderful things and smiles and memories you could share of times you've already experienced with these games. So Amiga CD32, Amstrad CPC. All these games are provided as, they're fully scraped for the most part. When I say scraped, most of them come with box art, as you see here, a screenshot, a video preview. Some include marquees, as you see in the bottom left, which is essentially just the logo of the game. Some include information about the game in the bottom right. Some even include, you'll see rankings there, completely arbitrary. They don't really mean anything. I don't know what council is voting on these games, but just kind of neat to have. Amstrad CPC. Apple II. See some of these old consoles, these old computer systems have multiple discs. Well, how do I load these multiple discs? You go to the user guide. It's all detailed there for you. Arcade is a pretty awesome system in general. This is one I'm particularly proud of, just given how much time it took to really align all of this stuff. And where is it? Yeah. Another thing that's better shown than told. So each game loads with this sort of retroized 8-bit loading screen. For the most part, games have console bezels. Each console, for the most part, has its own custom bezel, unless otherwise noted in my guide where performance was an issue. But this particular genre of games, arcade, and the arcade consoles, which is Capcom, PlaySystem 1, 2, 3, and Cave, all include these really just outstanding, all the original artwork, these custom overlays from the actual arcade itself. So really lends credence to this, I'm back in the arcade, I got quarters in my pocket sort of feel. Man, oh man. Before I get carried away, I got back out of that. But you see how easy that was to just back out of that, right? We were just in a game. There's a hotkey system in Emulation Station that allows you to, get out of games very fast, load games quickly, exit, save games quickly, and that's all detailed in the guide. And then, unless otherwise noted, Where some systems require a keyboard, require a mouse, you have to more manually go through, you know, an F12 push on a keyboard, an F11 push to bring up a main menu to exit it. But I want to note this section in particular just because all of these games have these bezels. And here, I'll do one more. Probably the only place you'll see something with Alien vs. Predator on it where it's actually good. See, got the original bezel. So awesome. Really pretty awesome. Yeah. And then in and out, just like that. So we'll start going through some of these systems a little bit quicker here. Atari 800, Atari 2600. And as you go through, you know, there's some disparity, right? The Atari 800 is the kind of more fringe system, very old. A lot of the artwork probably doesn't exist or wasn't available. But these more mainstream consoles, you know, now we're talking 5200 Atari, excuse me, 2600, yikes. I haven't had my coffee. Atari 5200. And you see these games come fully scraped, video previews and stuff like that. At the very least, every single game on this build has a screenshot. I went through meticulously, so you're at least grounded. 23,000 titles to go through is a very daunting thing. So I always wanted to give a sense of familiarity. You know, you always kind of understand where you are, and you know, you understand what a button push could mean. So great, we're going to play Choplifter. I know exactly what that is, what experience I'll be provided with. Atari Jaguar, completely experimental. I left it on here because, almost for this game exclusively, Alien vs. Predator, I always fucking wanted this game. Could never get it, it was too violent. And Atari Jaguar was like $8,000. And Atari Jaguar could barely even play Atari Jaguar games. It's notorious, the Jaguar emulation in the community, that it just doesn't function. It's a very tough technology to emulate, given the processing power, apparently. And you'll see some performance issues as well as far as Dreamcast is concerned and Nintendo 64 is concerned. It was more the tail end of those of the processing power for the Pi. So it's really pushing some of the limits for the two latter mentioned titles, consoles, excuse me, N64 and Dreamcast. I've only included playable games, but it's worth noting with the Jaguar, this is completely experimental, but fun to see. Atari Lynx. All the old classic handhelds are here, and they all have their own custom bezels. I'll show you what that means in a second. Atari ST. Atari ZEGS. This system never existed, or you never knew it existed. It was never released, but it was released to you. Cave, again, another arcade sort of themed console. A Japanese maker. Some really cool vertical shooters here. ColecoVision. Even some of these retro consoles have some really great, the more mainstream ones like Coleco come fully scraped and stuff like that. Commodore 64. Thousands of games to play on this one. Commodore 128. A lot of these Commodore systems were difficult to set up, but worth the time. Again, I mean, Commodore represents a gigantic percentage of, you know, classic memories that people probably have about video games, right? Capcom Play System. This is, again, all the seminal sort of Capcom titles that you know. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, great game. Ghouls and Ghosts. The Punisher. Street Fighters. Willow. Awesome. And then just as the Capcom Play System evolved, you know, you have more modernized versions. You have the 1944s, 19XX, more vertical shooters. Often imitated. Street Fighter Alphas, you know, these games. And then you get to Capcom Play System 3, the last sort of, generation of these games, and you have all the Street Fighter 3s, awesome stuff. Red Earth was really difficult to find, super rare, was very, very hard, even with Google, to find some of these things and line everything up, and you know, everything has to be so finite and perfect. Daphne is the Laserdisc genre, so kind of just, you know, Dragon's Lair. Press X to avoid a sword swing, and it's kind of a fun experience to play with someone, like a choose your own adventure. Dragon 32. Dreamcast, again, only the playable titles. The only fringe thing that is probably super glitchy for you would be Crazy Taxi 2. I've selfishly included it because I loved this game. I loved playing it for the Offspring, driving by the, I think Domino's was in the game, or Pizza Hut. It was Pizza Hut. I loved this game so much, so it's here. But all these other games play great. Volgar the Viking is a really amazing title. It was ported to the Dreamcast. It was on a lot of indie stores. It's kind of an homage to the Super Ghouls and Ghosts, the Castlevanias. Great speedrun title. A lot of fun. Soul Calibur. Oh, man. Famicom Disk System. Now, as you saw in the arcade genre, the custom bezels, what I did outside of the arcade was for each console, unless otherwise noted, I've included custom bezels specific to each system. So I've kept that themed and laced through with that thread. See? So they all have their custom bezels, each system, for the most part. Some of them, the old Commodores, the Dreamcast, just for performance, I decided not to include them. And you're better off for it anyways. Translates well to the gameplay. All these old Japanese games you probably never heard of. Game & Watch is really just worth stopping by to note one thing, and it is a really cool thing, and you'll want to play these titles. Good for a laugh. This is the precursor to kind of a Tiger Electronics, those sort of handheld titles that you remember growing up with in those long car rides to maybe Maine. Sister's annoying you. Let me play Gauntlet, Mom. Yeah, see, here you go. And it includes the vectorless overlay. It's just like the old title. And then it goes true HD. Ahead of its time, you know. But in and out, super smooth experience. We were just in a game, we're just back in the lobby. All of these consoles are like that for the most part. Some of the more retro consoles, the computer systems, take some loading liberties just because of the discs. That's how they used to load. But exiting games for the most part is pretty smooth and always within reach. Just a quick menu away or button press away. Game Gear, Game Boy, and I'll show you handhelds real quick as we move along here. Now, every single handheld console on this system is represented with a vectorless bezel, just like this, overlay. True to form. Honestly, it's like it's right off the nightstand again, back into your hands, and this was worth it. This took a while to set up, just to get the sizing right and to get everything lined up, but I think that really... And so again, hopefully that question that you asked yourself in the beginning, what makes you different? Hopefully all of these remarks are answers to that question. Game Boy Advance. And, you know, you can go... Game Boy Advance is a huge, huge list of games. Not as big as some of the others, but here we are. How do I get around to different titles? I want to get to Teen Titans. I didn't. It looks like an awful game. Looks better now, okay? But, you know, how do I get to T? So you hit select on the controller, and then you can ground yourself with a letter. Takes you right to that section of the games. You know, so if you're dealing with 2,000 games, how do I get to, I don't know, Donkey Kong? Great, go to D. And there won't be a Donkey Kong here, probably, but you get the sense. You know, there's always a very quick solution to get around this build, even though there's a significant amount of it to get around. Game Boy Color. Television. A lot of bleeps and boops here. And you'll see here, even then, this is a really retro console, but it's really well scraped. Provided with video previews, screenshots. And again, just to note, all systems and all games have screenshots. So you're never left without, you know, a grounded experience and left wondering, what am I actually going to play here? Quality and quantity. Sega Master System. No repeat titles. I don't know if I've already noted that, but I was meticulous. I went through with a comb. Sega Genesis. I mean, most kids' wheelhouse is right here. Most of my friends, that's for sure. Good time spent. Mega Drive. Now this was the Japanese Genesis. MSX. Now MSX is a framework created by Microsoft. Their sort of first line of computers, I think, or game console computers. I'm not sure. It's a weird sort of blend of everything. You know, Microsoft always trying to be everything all at once that you never knew you needed. But this was really ahead of its time, and these sort of fringe MSX consoles were incredibly difficult to set up. This is all a Japanese console. This never made it to the U.S., but all these games are playable and available for you. This one in particular was incredibly difficult to set up. I went through game by game to make sure it worked. Completely worth it. There's some really cool stuff on here that you've never heard of. Probably don't know what it means given the Japanese labeling, but just really cool stuff to get lost in. Neo Geo, always wanted one of these. Again, just a lot of arcade titles here that are ported to the console. Metal Slugs, yeah, that's fucking badass. Neo Geo CD, another console that took a significant amount of time to set up, just to find the correct ROMs and the right BIOS, even with Google. Very difficult to do some of these things. And again, another rabbit hole that I went down, and once you get to a point, you know, of no return, it was really just I wanted to do it right before I came back up, and I did that with everything on here. I spared no expense. Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo Pocket Color, Nintendo 64. Now again, just keep your expectations curbed. You're not going to get 4-player GoldenEye, you know, running smoothly, and even then GoldenEye's a little glitchy through some of the cutscenes. But all these games are completely playable for the most part. It's just the technology, given the Nintendo 64 emulation, is at the end, the tail end of the capabilities for the Raspberry Pi computer itself. But you will be left nowhere near as depressed as I'm making it sound. It's just so cool to see. I spent so many long nights in Scott's basement playing some of these with some of my best friends, you know, so cool to see these again. Big part of my childhood. Nintendo 64, peripheral released in Japan for the Nintendo 64. Excuse me, this is the Nintendo 64 DD, a disc drive peripheral released in Japan. You never heard of it, but now you have. It's here for you to play. Nintendo DS. Now this translates incredibly well on a TV or a monitor with double screens. Really pretty awesome gameplay. I mean, this was a lot of puberty here. My wheelhouse, Nintendo Entertainment System. Adventures of Bayou Billy. That son of a bitch. Still getting the shit kicked out of him. Never seen anyone have a good time playing this game. Just frustration. I don't think I'm going to beat it. You know, it's funny. So next to my childhood is my father's childhood, and you know, video games were a language that we spoke and spoke well, and it's something I hope you take with you into this experience. You know, Nostalgia Box, the whole point of it is to kind of share those memories you have of maybe your son or your daughter or with your friends, and to kind of pass it along. What better time in the world to do it now? You know, everyone needs a distraction, and what better way to get distracted than, you know, reawaken that inner child and have some fun with him or her. So it's just cool to see these. A lot of triangles, a lot of squares, you know, very pixelated, but it's fun to have. Man, it's like you're on the links with Tiger. Look at this game. Open Board Beats of Rage. This is a user-created section console. Basically, these are all old sprites and characters from the original games themselves, so like Double Dragon. These characters were pulled out of the games, and then people recreated them with their own fight physics and stuff like that. So a lot of familiar territory, but you've never seen any of this stuff before, and it's a lot of fun for two people. Auric, old computer systems here. Another one on the list. A lot of European titles here. PC games. Now this is probably one of my favorite sections. I spent a lot of long nights, a lot of long weekends in basements, quarantined off playing these games. And you know, what better example to show you this section than Fallout. Now, these games are all contained on the MS-DOS box emulator. You may be wondering, what do I have to do to start these before I have to wrestle with an MS-DOS prompt, or you know, I'd have to, what's the run command? Is it load or start? All these games run from a BAT file or an exe file. It's all contained within the emulator. And that's it. So with the ease you saw yourself being able to go in and out of Nintendo games and all those other sorts of consoles, even with the MS-DOS box, you get right in. It's super smooth experience. You need a keyboard and mouse, obviously. but I just want to skip through so you can see. Now, if that doesn't elicit nostalgia, I don't know what does. So keyboard and mouse required, but you can see how easily and smoothly and quickly you are in and out of a PC game. That's unheard of. Imagine playing that thing and trying to exit or load that as quickly as we just did. And so on Reddit, there's a very popular thread about, I think, the top 100 MS-DOS titles. Almost all of them are here, and then about 284 more, however many that is. So even if you can't find the ones you remember, you'll find something to help distract you. The Mech Warriors, right? This section in particular is outstanding, and I would recommend you, if you have any questions at all about what titles are actually included, please check the game list. It goes section by section, console by console. Rise of the Triad. Always wanted to play these. So I made sure all the games I wanted to play in shareware catalogs that I never got to order was on this list. And we're all better off for it. This game, Shadow Warrior. Woo. Commodore PET. Super old system. A lot of foreign stuff on here. I think some Swedish or German, but worth including. Part of the history of video games, you know. Commodore Plus 4. My thought was, who am I to dictate what should and shouldn't be included, even if it's fringe and I had never heard of it and it seemed futile or the game seemed stupid. To somebody else, that was their childhood. So I wanted to kind of encapsulate all of that. And you'll see here, look at this, Commodore Plus 4. At the very least, these games have the screenshot and they have the marquee. Even these fringe consoles that are 1984, 1985, almost 30 years ago, all come with artwork. The Pokemon games here all come with a custom bezel as well. Actually, I might as well just show you really quick. Keeping with the theme of all handhelds having their custom overlays, this one has a particularly cool one. See? Awesome. And, you know, just doing that took me hours of my life, you know, just to get that set up and situated and all those games to function. And it just seeing it as I go through these menus and speaking about it to you, it feels completely worth it. So this section is one that would have went under most people's radars, but I'm making sure it doesn't. This is the ports section. And ports section here is basically a framework for first-person shooter titles, as you see. So you have some of the Quakes here, Duke Nukem's, Doom 1, Doom 2, and Wolfenstein, but they're brutalized. So you've never heard anything like this, and I'm sure you've never seen anything like this. This took a significant amount of time to set up. I've set up all these games to play with the controller. If you want to play, say, Doom and Wolfenstein with the mouse and keyboard, you can do that in the section we just had, the PC game section. But these are set up to play with the controller, and nothing speaks more to my childhood than Wolfenstein and Doom and Quake, and to have it sort of modernized, version 2.0. This was a rabbit hole I got lost down for days, and I'm glad I did, because as you see here, dual wielding, got nades. It is like, hey, you had a tough day at work? Not anymore. Awesome. Brutal Doom 2, Brutal Doom 1 is the same. Brutal Wolfenstein is the same. The Dooms themselves have these metal remix soundtracks. Just turn run mode on. But awesome stuff. Just cool to see even like the old Quake game, and I included the HD 9 Inch Nails soundtrack. Just cool to hear that again too. So what separates this build out from other builds I've seen or other things I can purchase? Well, a lot of these other builds, you have to make sacrifices, you know, to include the 50 million games they advertise themselves as having. A lot of them sacrifice consoles like PlayStation or Nintendo 64 and shortchange you and your memories by just loading in 30,000 Commodore 64 titles. No one wants to play that, and there's like 25,000 repeats. That's gross. See, I didn't do that. I provided the best of everything for you, and I don't think you can speak to the best in gaming if you don't include PlayStation on your build. So this PlayStation assortment includes all the top 25, all the top 50 lists across the entirety of the internet. I scoured all of them, and then many more to get lost into. All of them play really pretty well. I've run into no issues, and I've spent a lot of time in this particular console. Die Hard trilogy, huh? God, that game's fucking awesome. Epic Trails. PSP. Most of these games don't work knowingly. Well, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. The games I've included work great. Luminace is a game everyone should play, a puzzle game, and then these other two are kind of indie titles. I've included only the games that work well, and Luminace is a game, kind of like a Tetris clone, as you see here, that everyone should at least play once in their lifetime. Really a lot of fun. So these three PSP titles play great. It's probably the extent of PSP titles you could get to function on RetroPie, as well as I have. PSP mini games were kind of like the downloadable games from the PSP store for the PSP. If you only play one of these games, make it OMGZ. I wouldn't recommend you only play one. I recommend you play them all when you get to them. Jetpack Joyride's a lot of fun too. Hell, you even have Angry Birds on here. But OMGZ is a really cool puzzle game, worth noting. RetroPie menu, the configuration. Don't really go into that unless you have questions that I have to guide you through. Satellaview is a modem peripheral for the Super Famicom, so the Super Nintendo equivalent in Japan. A lot of these games, as you see here, are like sections of a game, so kind of a precursor to DLC almost, and you download a chapter and download a chapter and download a chapter, so ahead of its time. Scum V here are the point-and-click titles, the LucasArts games. We have Police Quest as well, Space Quests, Secret of Monkey Island, the Indiana Jones titles. You'll find a lot of the point-and-click titles here. Maniac Mansion. Interesting to note, a point-and-click title that you probably won't find here on PC is Myst. If you do want to play Myst, I have included that back in the PlayStation section. Figured it'd be sacrilegious to make one of these without Myst on it, and this was the best way to provide it for you. So Myst is here. Rounding down here, I know I've been rambling almost for 30 minutes now. Really just want to show you what you're getting yourself into. Sega Computer 3000, SC3000. Again, this is just to stop and show you real quick that all systems have custom bezels, as you see here. Goes right into a game, and then we exit right out of a game, super quick. Just worth noting again. Sega 32X. Always wanted this game for the system, for the Doom. I don't know why, because it was on the PC too. I think it's just more accessible when you're a kid, you know? You have the console. PCs weren't as expensive. This game was great. It's a golf game. Sega CD. Mickey Mania. Awesome game me and my sisters used to play. Sega SG-1000. Super Nintendo's. A lot of funny new feelings were budding during this phase as well. Super Nintendo CD. Super Famicom. The Japanese Super Nintendo. Safami Turbo. This is another peripheral for Nintendo. Super Graphics. Turbo Graphics. Always wanted this. Turbo Graphics CD. TI-994A, another computer system. And again, all these have screenshots. TRS-80, probably the most manual experience on here. I have it well detailed in my guide. This one took a while to set up. I thought it'd be the easiest. Turned out to be one of the hardest. But again, just a lot of old computer games. All these discs are compilations. In order to load a game from that disc, you have to load a new DOS disc in slot 1, and then load one of these discs in slot 2, and then you're provided with an emulator prompt, a console prompt, and then you enter the title for the game. So that's all detailed. Sounds more difficult than it actually is. Vectrix, another old console. These also, real quick, as we're rounding down here, reaching the end of the consoles. So I'll take just a little bit of time here to show you this. And it's worth noting that outside of the arcade genre, as I noted before, these Vectrix games have custom bezels true to the game itself. Really pretty awesome. Looks really outstanding. As we round down here, the final few, we got VIC-20. Took a while to set these up for the Commodores, some of these old Commodores, but again, worth it. All these are set up for the most part to run with a controller, unless otherwise noted in my guide. Virtual Boy. And considering this a handheld, this comes with its own custom bezel as well. It's like you're looking right back into it, huh? Those games are hilarious to see. Wonder Swan, another handheld, custom bezel as well. You'll see what looks like maybe lag on the screen, just because I'm pressing the A button too excitedly, trying to rush through this. Sharp X1. These took a lot of time to kind of load. I went through and manually found screenshots for most of these. I want it well represented. You know, if it's going to be on my build, I want it to be on my build, and I want it to be on the build right. Sharp X68000, another Japanese computer system. And, you know, in the names, I left dates and years and studios for some of these titles simply because you've never seen some of them before, and I figured it'd be good sort of guidance, good information to have. Z Machine is a console exclusively of text-based adventures, so if that's your thing, you grew up doing that, they're here for you. Just cool to see the evolution of games, and the entire evolution of it is on this one disc. The Sinclair ZX Spectrum, of European games here. And rounding things down, we have the Sinclair ZX81. About as retro could get. It's like your TI graphing calculator on steroids, which isn't really saying much. But given the time, I'm sure this was pretty revolutionary, and it's just cool to see. So that's the entire console, entire system. I know I went through in depth. Thanks for watching. My name is Tom. This is Nostalgia Box. I hope you make smiles and memories with yours. If you do have any questions about this build, have any things you're curious about, have any concerns, or have any games you're looking for in particular, feel free to shoot me an email at the email address provided, or feel free to check the game list again if you have any questions. There's 23,000 things on here. There are no repeat titles. Everything is scraped through and through as articulately as humanly possible to provide you with the best experience that I could, and that's all it's about, is you and your experience with it. So I hope you have a good one. Thanks for watching.